Hey there, Grumpy Old Fart here. This is a compilation video of some of my greatest hits. Hope y'all enjoy them.
As far as players go, everybody wants to run a character that they enjoy. And there's a lot of things, a lot of different character classes that are quality classes to play. People like running wizards because of the magic, and they like running clerics because of the healing abilities, and that's good. And honestly, who doesn't like running a good thief once in a while? So, they're there. It's all there. And they have good subclasses too. Wizards have magic, but they really suck in combat. Everything is a trade-off. Every character class has advantages and disadvantages. Wizards have magic, but they suck in physical combat. Once a wizard is out of spells, they're a crappy fighter with a dagger. That's pretty much it. Or a staff, Thieves, they have great pilfering abilities and spying abilities, but they suck. They really, really suck in combat unless they can get a good sneak attack. They can get one good shot, and then after that, it's, whatever they can do. Clerics are good fighters, and they can heal, but they have some serious restrictions when it comes to robbing and plundering. I mean, they have alignment restrictions because you have to go by what your god says. Because you're a cleric, you're a priest, But when you come right down to it, sometimes you just want a good hack and slash, thug type, kill it fighter, okay? And fighters are awesome. A lot of people back in the day, they thought that fighters were anybody who couldn't qualify for another class, make him a fighter. And there is some, I guess, some truth to that, but that's not what they were designed. It's not the way they were designed. There are many subclasses of fighters with distinctive abilities, but they also have some serious restrictions. If you want to hack and bash with no restrictions, your basic fighter is your choice. That's what it boils down to. When you're choosing a character class for the character you want to run, you want as many options as possible. And in my opinion, you don't get many more options than running a fighter. You don't have magic, but then again, you get to use a battle axe. You don't have healing abilities, but you get to use a spear, and you get great savings throws. You don't get to use thieving abilities, but you can still rob people. It's called bash them in the head with a club and take their shit. Okay? There's no subtlety to a fighter. Excuse me. Sorry, I dropped my pen. There's no subtlety to a fighter. I mean, there are some variants of fighters that are subtle, but, basically, the advantages of... There's no downside to a fighter. There are a few upsides. Basically, when Dungeons & Dragons first came out, the AD&D books, all they had was a player's handbook. And basically, they gave it so that fighters with a high strength and constitution had ability modifiers unavailable to other classes. For example, if you had a strength of 18, you got to roll a percentage for exceptional strength. A wizard can have a strength of 18, but he doesn't get to do this. Okay, and the exceptional strength adjustments, 18 double ought's the highest, 1898, like that, 18-01, that kind of thing. And it gives you more bonuses in combat. Allows you to carry more, which is important, especially when you're playing in a game where the primary currency is a gold coin. Gold weighs a lot. I did a video on encumbrance. Check that out. You want somebody who's strong on your team who can help carry shit. Everybody gets an equal share, but packing it out is the issue. You see. The other thing about that is constitution. Anybody who's not a fighter or not a fighter type, when they roll their constitution, they can get an 18 constitution, but they're limited to the +2 on their hit point adjustment. Okay, fighters with an 17 or an 18 constitution can get a +3 or a +4 on their hit points. So they're actually tougher, physically tougher. They're harder to kill, which is a good thing, especially in a role-playing game. Fighters basically deal a lot of damage. They can carry a lot of shit, and they're tough to kill. That's what it boils down to. A lot of people thought that like, for example, a wizard can get a fireball at 5th level. It's a 3rd level spell, so you get it at 5th level. And a basic fireball does 5d6 damage. That's a lot of damage, right? So they kind of offset that against the fighter's ability to hit with a sword, and they're like, well, fighters really aren't that great, right? Then they came out with another book called The Unearthed Arcana. And this book is wonderful. It gives all kinds of new spells, but it also ups the abilities of fighter classes with what's called weapon specialization. They give a lot of new weapons that the fighter can use, but on top of that, they give what's called weapon specialization. Essentially, a fighter, rather than getting all these neat weapon proficiencies, they can take several of them and dump them into the same weapon and get bonuses. So a fighter, and you can double specialize. So a fighter, for example, who double specializes in a hammer, he gets a +3 to hit, a +3 to damage, and extra attacks with that weapon. And it works really good for bows too. My wife right now is running a character who's specialized in a bow, and normally if you're using a bow, you get 2 shots around. Well, if you have an arrow knocked, you get 3 shots. And if it's within a certain range, you do double damage. So bows aren't just a harassing distance weapon, you know. In reality, if you get shot with an arrow in a medieval setting without penicillin and without serious doctors, yeah, you're pretty well screwed. I don't care where they hit you. If an arrow goes into your torso, every time you move, that arrowhead is grinding shit up inside. If you get hit in the arm, it's bad, but it's not bad. It could be far worse. If you get hit in the torso, you're pretty well screwed. Okay, that's in reality. In game terms, an arrow does a d6 damage. That's it. Okay. Now, with this weapon specialization, with the fighters, with the bow, they do double damage. So, and plus you get to add your bonuses in. So I think it's a +2. So it's a d6 +2 times 2. That, you know, a d6 versus up to 16 points of damage. You see what I'm saying? It can get quite nice. I mean, they make bows more effective. Archers become very, very nice. So the next time you're considering a character class for a new campaign and you want something that just lets you go hog wild and do whatever, consider a fighter. Don't discount that basic fighter, because they have good hit points, great saving throws, they do great damage, and they can use pretty much any weapon. And there's no alignment restriction for a fighter. You could be a good fighter, an evil fighter, a neutral fighter, you know, whatever. Your alignment restrictions are not there at all. They're very survivable, very effective, and I promise you could certainly do far, far worse. I had a conversation the other day with a woman who is a proponent of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, and her stance was that 1st edition AD&D magic users, the whole class, was stupid. And I jokingly said, their prime requisite is intelligence, so ain't none of them stupid, right? You can't be a stupid wizard. You can't do it. And she went on and on about it. That's not what I meant, you know it, blah, blah, blah. People just can't take a joke. At any rate, her primary argument was that with a d4 hit points, they are weak. I answered, be a better player. Don't enter combat like a fighter. If you're trying to go toe-to-toe with somebody, you're playing it wrong. You know, if you're running a first level wizard and you're trying to go into combat, melee combat with your dagger or staff or whatever, you deserve to die. You're playing stupidly. Be a better player. Her next argument was that with only one spell at first level, they are virtually useless. My response was, be a better player. Know what your spells do. Know which spells to use in different situations. Understand precast spells. Now, precast spells have been around forever. I use them in my games. My son is getting ready to run an AD&D game, and I rolled up a wizard for that. I got to talk to him about precast spells. That's a good reminder. At any rate, if you don't know what a precast spell is, check out my video, AD&D Hacks Precast Spells. Okay? At any rate, she was under the impression that magic users have their magic missile and that's it. That kind of thinking is going to get you killed no matter what. Magic users only have a d4 hit points at first level, but If you're going into melee combat with a wizard, you're not that bright. If you plan to go into combat, read your spells. If your idea of wizard combat is centered on magic missiles, you're missing the big picture. A magic missile can hit one target. You only have, at first level, you have one magic missile, you can hit one target. At higher levels, the magic missile spell becomes more powerful. You can hit multiple targets, that's cool. But at first level, we're talking about first level wizards here. You can hit one target. Burning Hands can sweep a room. It's a fan of flames. The good part about Burning Hands is it sets things on fire. Burning opponents take damage over several rounds until they are extinguished. Somebody gets hit with a Burning Hands spell and they continue combat without putting themselves out, they're taking damage every round. It continues. Dancing lights in the shape of a glowing humanoid can scare the daylights out of primitives and distract others. A glowing humanoid shows up. What are you going to do? I'll direct my attack at him. Meanwhile, the wizard over here turns and runs away or whatever. Okay, that's part of the dancing lights spell. Firewater turns a water skin into a weapon, especially when paired with a torch. You cast your fire water on your water skin and spray the water, the now volatile chemical mixture on him that burns. If he's holding the torch, it's even better, It's not what you got, it's how you use it. The grease spell keeps opponents from attacking if they do, and if they do, you drop a torch. Because that shit burns. Read the spell. Shocking Grasp in a pool of water can be devastating. I did a spell on that called Watch Your Fire. Especially if these opponents are standing in a pool of water, right? Shocking Grasp. You hit one of them, the electricity transfers to all of them. Sleep affects multiple targets. The first spell I take, whenever I'm running a first level wizard, the first spell I try to get is Sleep. The reason being, Sleep affects multiple targets. If what you're fighting won't be affected by your sleep, you don't need to be fighting it. Either you've done a very serious tactical miscalculation and you need to get the hell out of Dodge, or your dungeon master has it in for you and you need a new dungeon master. It's that simple. Okay? And these are only a few options. There's tons more. Magic users are limited to dagger, dart, and staff. When I create a new magic user, I usually choose darts. And people go, but they only do a D3. Yeah, but you get 3 shots a round. And it's a missile weapon. You can, from a distance. You can throw a dagger as well, yes. But you get 1. Well, you can only get 1 a round. With darts, you get 3 a round. You're throwing handfuls of the damn things. You get to use your dexterity bonus to hit with them. In my opinion, it's much more advantageous than a melee weapon, because if you got your dagger trying to stab him, you're in melee combat with a bad guy. That's not real bright as a magic user with a D4 hit points. If you're at a distance, you can throw darts, and if he starts coming towards you, you can turn and run. Okay? Survivability. Here's the other hard part that people don't like about wizards: creating a spellbook. Creating a spellbook can be annoying, but that's literally the worst part of creating a character. Your intelligence gives you the minimum and maximum number of spells in the book for each level, and the percentage chance of a spell being in your book. Now, at first level, you only get first level spells, so you don't have a whole hell of a lot to do. And if you play it according to the book, later on, you only get certain, as you go up, as you're able to cast a new spell, you get 1 from the next one, and you randomly determine it. So, and then later on, if you want more spells to go into your book, you've got to find those bad boys. So it's kind of a difficult road there, getting new spells. But people don't share spells too well when you have to work hard to get them. They play wizards more effectively because, gee, I've got this spell, can you trade me for that one? It's not, oh yeah, take all these spells, blah, 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 blah. Spells are hard to come by. Just saying. So you got your intelligence. It gives you the minimum and maximum number of spells in your book for the first level. and you got a percentage chance of the spell being in your book. What you do is you choose a spell and roll to see if it's in your book. If it is, you write it down. If not, don't. Keep choosing spells and rolling until you either reach your maximum number or you're done with the first level spells in the book. In the player's handbook on Earth to Combat. That's where the spells are. If at that point, when you get done through the whole list, if you don't have the minimum number, you get to start over, choosing and rolling again. Okay, I've never had to do that ever. I've always gotten the maximum amount before I get done with the spells. So sometimes I don't always get the spells that I want, but like for this wizard that I just rolled up, the first level for my son's game, I didn't get Shocking Grasp. It's one of my favorite spells because you can precast that. At any rate, I got the other one, Sleep, Magic Missile, blah, 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 but I didn't get Shocking Grasp. Boo-hoo. I'm going to try to work through it anyway. Why? I'm a better player. At least I like to think I am. Many of the magic user spells in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons are not meant for combat. If you're creating a magic user and your spell choices are centered on combat spells, you are missing out. Many useful spells include Detect Magic. How do you know something's magical? It looks nice. That's it? Really? How about Detect Magic? Let's find out if it is magical. And by the way, artifacts and relics don't show up as magic anyway, so that doesn't matter. Read Magic. There are spells written, and then there are some texts written that require you to have the spell called Read Magic. And a lot of information that you get from those is useful in the campaign. Just saying. Identify. We got a magic item, we don't know what it means. Well, here you go. Identify. That's what that's for. If you don't have that in your spellbook as a first level wizard, your party's not going to like you very much. That's all I'm saying. Spider Climb. You want to get from point A to point B, you got to get there somehow. You got to get up to that window. There you go. Spider Climb is very useful. It's also useful for hiding, because in a dark room you can get up in the ceiling in a corner and just sit there and hide, and hang from the ceiling, as it were, like Spider-Man. And there are people walking underneath. Unless they look up into the darkness, they won't see you. Spider Climb is quite useful. I did a video, I cannot remember what the name of it was, a while back, where the group I was playing with wanted me to use all the spells, and use it, play by the book, as it were. And so I said, you really want to play by the book? Fine. Spell components it is. Everybody's looking around trying to find a live spider for the wizard to eat so we can climb the wall. A spider climb. Hold Portal. Hold Portal is really nice for when you're trying to escape. If you're running through a dungeon or a catacombs or whatever, and there's a series of doors, you can turn and shut the door behind you, cast Hold Portal on it, and run, and the bad guys are having a hell of a time getting through that door. It's also nice if you need a secure place to sleep. You go in there, you shut the door, you cast Hold Portal, and then you're able to get some sleep for a few hours at least. I'm not sure how long that lasts. The duration of that might be in question, but it's something. Tensor's Floating Disc. I have lost count of the number of uses for that spell. You can carry treasure. You can carry treasure. You can use it as a... That thing is just not going to stay. You can carry treasure. You can use it to bridge the gap across a ravine or something. If there's a gap, like a crevice you have to get across, Tensor's Floating Disc. Everybody can get across. It has so many uses. That and a shield spell, somebody made a tank out of it, a hover tank. You could use so many things with that. My point is, if all you're doing is combat, you're missing out. You are missing out. There's a funny story. I was running a magic user in a game years ago, and our party was beyond broke. We was broke. Broke ass bitches. That's the term they use around here. Our fighters had no armor, and the best weapons we had were clubs, and those were sticks we found by the side of the damn road. That is just determined not to stay, isn't it? At any rate, the Dungeon Master said there was a reason for it, and it was part of his campaign, and that's all well and good, but I didn't like it. Magic users are not fighters, and I wanted our fighters to at least have a chance to protect my wimpy ass. I used a sleep spell to knock out a tax collector and his guards. We raided their tax chest, only taking coinage that couldn't be traced, and we were able to outfit our group. I did something similar with a second level. My character was a little higher level. I had a second level spell. I was third level, I think it was, and I used Fool's Gold. I had a dagger, an old dagger, and I used Fool's Gold, and oh look, I've got a golden dagger. How much would you pay for that? And the guy says, oh yeah, I'll give you X amount for that, and we were able to outfit our party with that. Of course, the trick with that is you got to get the hell out of Dodge before before the spell wears off and they figure out it's just a normal dagger. They got conned out of money for it. The trick there is to run like hell to the next town, and that's where you outfit your stuff. The trick here is with proper planning and knowledge of the spells, a magic user can be a real hoot to play, and I'm going to enjoy playing this one in my son's game because he's an excellent dungeon master, and with any luck, it's going to be a blast. Thieves. For those of you who don't know, thieves are the primary scouts. They for a group of players, when you're in a dungeon crawl, they're the guys who are up front checking for traps and picking locks and doing the stuff thieves do. They're the crafty ones. They have to think outside the box. They have to figure ways around problems. They're the problem solvers. And most people enjoy running thieves. Some people are not real adept at running thieves because they don't have the mindset for it. And I completely understand that. Some people are better playing fighters or wizards or whatever. And that's cool. Everybody's different. If everybody was the same, the world would be a dull place, right? However, when the thief is part of the group and they're out adventuring, the thief is a very, very valuable player, a valued character. When they're in town, thieves are less, what's the word I'm looking for? They're not the most upstanding players, characters in the world. They require specific items, like specific tools, lockpicks, that kind of thing. They pick pockets. If they're part of a guild, they're beholden to that guild. Many thieves who travel with groups don't belong to a guild, or they pay their dues but rarely ever make it back to that town, which, I don't see the need for that. But the point I'm getting at is if a thief is living in a town, sometimes they might want to be involved with a guild. Otherwise, they're independent and the guild may not appreciate them very much. If they're out adventuring, it doesn't matter. But if they're but if the adventure is in a town, then you gotta have it's a consideration. That's all I'm saying. The first thing I'm going to do here is go for the kits that thieves purchase. Many of the thieving abilities require certain tools, picking locks, opening doors, that kind of thing. Checking for traps. They have a kit called Thieves Picks and Tools, and starting thieves generally buy those, and most dungeon masters don't put a lot of thought into what's in a kit like that. So I figured I'd put some stuff in here and this is by no means a complete list. There are classes that require specific tool kits, but the thief one is really the only one that comes to mind. I assume the clerics and the wizards and like that have kits as well, but those are less. They're not automatically put on the list. You know what I'm saying? Thieves' picks and tools are on the list to buy, so that's what I'm going to go with here. The standard set of thieves' tools that I use in my game, it's a pouch with a shoulder strap, and it contains, here we go, assorted lockpicks, 200 feet of twine, a small hammer, a screwdriver, pry bar or nail remover, chisels, some wood ones and some metal ones, a little bit of an assortment there, a small vial of acid in a little glass vial, and it's wrapped so to keep it safe so it doesn't break open, Climbing spikes, cushioned cloth for sound. In other words, if you need to break a window, you can put this cloth over it and give a little punch, and it breaks the glass, and it doesn't have that loud glass breaking sound. Cushion pads for your boots so that you can put these on and it helps with moving silently. A carrying bag, which the stuff is in. The carrying bag that the kit comes in. 10 assorted key blanks. A wax impression box. Essentially, you can make keys. Brace and a bit. Assorted probes. A mirror on a rod. A whetstone. A knife and sheath. A tinderbox. Tinderbox, I'm going to do that as well, I think. A tinderbox generally comes with flint and steel, and but it's bigger than that, what's required for that, so that you can put in kindling to start the fire the next night. A miniature lantern, a file, a flask of oil, a small funnel, 3 candles, tiny blades. Sometimes you can take a coin and sharpen the edge. That's good for cutting purse strings. Magnifying lens, small saw, a jimmy. If you don't know what a jimmy is, it's used for slipping locks and things like that. Pliers, 3 small bags, a crowbar, wax impression box. I already did that one. A sheet of mica, a hand drill, a listening horn for listening to tumblers, a small mirror, and a lodestone. That's what generally comes in my thieves' picks and tools kit. Many thieves sew small pockets and such into their clothing so that much of this gear can be hidden about their person, secretly and unseen. Other thieves modify their gear so that it appears as common items. Lockpicks can be disguised as hairpins, for example. Inventive players can come up with all kinds of clever workarounds. Thief characters are best run by players who can think outside the box, so keep that in mind. Now, when you're in town as a thief, the guilds are something you need to be very concerned with. Guilds are something one finds to be very prevalent in my world. Guilds of all kinds exist there. Merchants guilds, labor guilds, wizards guilds, mercenary guilds, teamsters guilds, farmers guilds, ranchers guilds, hunters guilds, carpenters guilds, masons guilds. Literally all manner of guilds exist in my world. And yes, there are thieves guilds as well. Thieves who belong to a thieves guild are expected to pay dues, but they are also expected to pay a portion of all gains made while on a job from the guild. So if the guild offers you a job and you take it, you have to pay a portion of that to the guild as of the proceeds, as well as your dues. And on independent jobs, the thieves may keep all of their proceeds. However, guild members are expected to check with the guild regarding any businesses they wish to rob in case those businesses are paying for protection, because that happens a lot. If the thief requires assistance from the guild, like manpower, specialists, information, equipment, etc., then the guild will demand a cut, as well as payment for those helping. If the thief requires fencing services for smuggling or smuggling services for stolen items, the guild will charge a hefty fee depending on the item and how easy it will be to move. If you steal something there's only one of and it's well known, you're not going to sell that in that city. They're going to have to smuggle that out and take it someplace else, or maybe melt it down for example, a large gold necklace with gems all over it, and everybody knows what it is. Everybody in town knows who owns it. If you steal that, you're not going to be able to sell that in town. They'll either have to smuggle it out and sell it elsewhere, or melt it down, to go to a smith and melt it down, get the gems out, that kind of thing. So it becomes a process, and the guild can help with that, but they are going to charge you for it. And small items, and they're not so much worried about. Your dues will cover that, but I'm talking big items. As far as the Thieves Guild itself goes, the amount of help a guild can provide and the amount of control they can exert is based on how big and powerful the guild is. A small-sized guild can fence stolen goods and might be able to smuggle goods out of the city. They may be able to organize small groups for jobs. Memberships usually 15 to 20 people. 15 to 20 or 25 people. That's about it. A medium-sized guild can do all of that and probably has between 6 to 20 low-level officials on the payroll. They have a number of illegal rackets going on, including protection schemes and organized crews for jobs. But it's all, they don't exert a lot of influence in the town. A large guild has a lot of power. Think a mafia family. They have a lot of power. Large guilds can cover for activities and find believable patsies, scapegoats, to pacify official investigations. They are well connected. They have many low-level officials will resist investigating anyone linked to the major guild for fear of being visited by some of their operatives, thugs, or in modern parlance, torpedoes, Now, multiple guilds can operate in the same city or area. Sometimes it's beneficial to have more than one. For example, 2 different guilds operating, but they have a working relationship together. They're not allies per se, but they play off of each other. In other words, Guild A takes protection money from this business for, to keep them from getting robbed, and none of the thieves from there rob them. However, the business gets robbed. They immediately go to their guild that they pay protection to and say, "Hey, what happened?" Guild A can say, "Oh no, it was Guild B. They did it. We'll have to work. We'll have to find some way to get you, to get back with them." And whether they do or not is up to them. But they have a scapegoat, and Guild B does the same thing to Guild A. In reality, Guild A probably robbed their own people, and even though they were taking protection money. You see what I'm saying? Sometimes guilds do that. Now, guilds who don't work together, who operate in the same town, probably won't like each other very much, and open warfare may ensue. So it just depends on how well they work together and what the situation is. Of course, there are no hard and fast rules that force a thief to join a guild. Not being part of a guild grants a certain amount of leeway and freedom. Unfortunately, when an ungilded thief operates in an area where a guild is prevalent, the guild may take offense at it. Not being part of a guild means that the thief has no access to fences, smugglers, or other specialists. So, if you get a chance, read up on the sections in the Player's Handbook and the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide, on Thieves Guilds. The books have a wealth of information useful to your games. I would recommend that you read up on all of that. And how you do your games is pretty much up to you. There's no real wrong way to play as long as the rules are consistent and everybody's having fun. That's your job. As a dungeon master, that's your job, making sure everybody's having fun. I treat the larger thieves guilds kind of like the Sopranos, Tony Soprano and the Mafia family, and it works really well. That's a consideration for your game.
Keep a spare eye on the thief, and for those of you who have gamed before, especially in Dungeons and Dragons, you know it's a good idea to keep an eye on the thief. For those of you who don't know, in advanced Dungeons and Dragons, thieves are very common. People steal a lot in the game, and because the Law and Order ain't what it is now. In the game, it's not what it is now. This is in a medieval setting. The thief class is very useful. You don't have to be a thief in order to steal, but anybody who steals is, I guess, considered a thief. But the thief class has specified and specific abilities that allow it to perform the function of being a thief. Consequently, those same skills and abilities also make them very useful in a team group, in a group setting. These abilities include picking pockets, opening locks, moving silently, hiding in shadows, climbing walls, hearing noises, Thieves are good at that. Reading languages, and thieves are good at different languages, including a special language that's used just by thieves called Thieves Camp. And they have the ability to backstab, and what that means is anybody can backstab, but thieves are really, really good at it. They do multiple damage on a backstab. So if a thief catches somebody by surprise and stabs them or attacks them with a melee weapon, they get multiple damage, times 2, times 3, times 4, whatever, depending on how high a level thief they are. And very, very useful in combat. One of the most important skills they have is called Find and Remove Traps, affectionately called farting, F-A-R-T, Find and Remove Traps. So you're going to fart on the door. You're going to find and remove traps on the door. Another one that, another useful thing that thieves have for a group is they have an intimate knowledge of the underworld. And in the game, a lot of times you have to steal an object from an evil person. And of course, you get the object back and there's a bunch of other stuff laying around. Of course, you know, you gather that stuff up because you got to have a payoff, right? Well, when you go to sell this stuff, if it's singular items or things that would be recognized, it makes it kind of hard to sell them off in town without arousing suspicion. So a thief who's intimately connected with the underworld, including the black market, there you go. You know, they can fence this and, you know, sell it off. So sometimes when you're playing a thief, it helps to have a mindset for it, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what that says about me, but anyway. And like I said, in a group setting, thieves are very, very useful. The problem with thieves is that they're thieves. Thieves, by the rules in the book, cannot be of a good alignment. They can be neutral or evil, but they can't be good. They don't necessarily have to be evil, but they can't be good. They, you know, neutral. And they are notorious for stealing from people that they shouldn't. I have lost count of the number of times we're riding out of a town and the city guard stops us and they go, "Hey, we're missing this. Let's check." And, "Well, we didn't do anything. We already went over there." And of course, the thief has it in a saddlebag. He's, you know. And this includes the party. Sometimes a thief can't help but pilfer from party members, and we generally try to avoid that. But I don't know of a thief yet that hasn't done it, or at least thought about it. So, you know. They also tend to get into trouble with this thief mentality, which, you know, again, thieves are very, very useful. The problem is they're thieves. So, paladins and other good aligned characters have a difficult time working with thieves. We were playing a game years ago, and my friend John was running a thief, and we had a paladin in the group, and we had a lawful good cleric and a few other good players. And so we had completed a mission and we were bringing the stuff back, and the thief didn't realize what all we needed to complete the mission. John didn't know because he had joined the party late. So he pilfered a few things from the party kitty, thinking, you know, a little extra bonus, you know. And when we got back, the item that we needed wasn't there. Well, we know it was there. We put it in a box ourselves. So immediately all eyes turned to John. And John was like, well. And there was a hullabaloo, and John ended up having to make up a new character because the paladin killed him. And we were able to complete the mission because the paladin retrieved the artifact from the thief who stole it from us in the first place, after we stole it from the person who stole it originally. So my point is, keep an extra eye on that thief. There is a class called the Assassin, and everybody loves running assassins, but nobody likes having them in the group. And there's a reason. The Assassin class is a subclass of the Thief, and they have many useful abilities similar to Thieves, so they're very similar in that respect, but they have a couple of abilities that Thieves generally don't have. One is they get to use what's called the assassination tables. Depending on their level and the level of the person that they're attacking, if they have surprise, they can use the backstabbing abilities of a thief for multiple damage. But they also get to use these assassination tables. So comparing the level of the assassin and the level of the victim, there's a chance when you hit them, there's a chance you can kill them outright. You know, and that's called the assassination tables because assassins know right exactly where to put the knife. Done. You know, that's their specialty because they're assassins. The other ability that they have is a disguise. Assassins can disguise themselves as other classes and other people. And the higher the level of assassin, the more powerful a character you are, the better your disguise is. The better you roll on the assassination tables. The higher your backstab multiplier. The better you can climb walls, that kind of thing. Assassins generally have to be of evil alignment. Many players love to play them, but many players or groups don't want them in the group. And there's a reason. Horror stories abound of assassins in groups that kill off the party after the treasure is collected. A thief will steal. Okay? Let's not mince words. Thieves steal. That's what they do. That's why they call thieves. Assassins are greedy thieves with no morals. Put it that way. And so they'll wait until the end of the mission when all the treasure's collected and everything, and then kill off everybody and run off with the entire treasure hoard. The assassin usually, it's something like this. The assassin will volunteer to stand watch and then goes around slitting throats in their sleep. I've seen that happen. He volunteers to make dinner and then poisons everyone. I've seen that happen. I was in a group years ago, and my friend Steven was running an assassin, and he did it well. He ran a really good assassin. I can't take nothing away from him there. The man knew how to run an assassin. I was the wizard in the group, and I kind of knew Steven, how he thought, you know. So we completed the scenario and came away with a huge treasure hoard, including a whole bunch of magic items. And he was saying, well, if I take that, I can still use this, but if I can't, you know, and basically I could see the cogs working, if you understand what I'm saying. And he was looking at the list of treasure, and because we all get to pick from the list, you know, and he was deciding what he could take and what he could. Turns out he could use everything on the list. And I kind of knew how Steven thought, and he was running an assassin, so you know. Of course, he volunteered to stand guard that night, so that the other characters, including the spellcasters, could sleep. Because, see, in Dungeons and Dragons, any caster, whether it's a cleric, druid, wizard, illusionist, whatever, in order to be able to cast spells, you have to get your 8 hours of sleep. If you don't get 8 hours of good, solid sleep, you don't get spells for the next day. So you're essentially useless. You're a body to hide behind while the enemy shoots arrows at you. That's your only use if you're a spellcaster without spells. Clerics aren't too bad because they can still wear armor and fight decently. Druids, same way, and they have other abilities, nature control. They can change into big animals and fight, you know, that kind of thing, because that's not a spell, that's an ability of a druid. But illusionists and wizards and things like that, the magic users of the group, they're pretty well up the proverbial foul-smelling waterway without adequate means of propulsion. And so, when he volunteered to stand guard that night, I said, sure, no problem. And I cast on myself. I had a number of 4th level spells, and I had Stone Skin, a spell called Stone Skin, memorized several times. And I still had them before I went to sleep, so I put one on myself, and I put one on a couple of the fighters. And as I recall, I was able to put one on the cleric. And he didn't know I had done that. So, when he, and of course, the night he waited till everybody was asleep. He went around and started slashing throats. The first person he attacked, Stone Skin is a spell that wizards use to protect themselves. The first time they get hit, it doesn't do any damage to them. So you could get hit with a big boulder and nothing, as long as you have the Stone Skin on. But it only works once, you know. So of course, the assassin went to slice a throat, and it didn't work. And the first thing the guy did, he was a fighter, the first thing he did, he got up trying to grab his sword, yelling, "He's trying to kill us! He's trying to kill us!" and woke everybody up. Yeah, the assassin has some splaining to do. Assassin didn't last long. He did not get a share of the treasure, and as I recall, him got buried by the side of the trail.
The Adventurer. And this is not. There was a character class that came out in one of the magazines. I want to say it was Dragon Magazine, but don't quote me. And it was called The Adventurer. I never liked that class, but I found a better one. It's not titled The Adventurer. It's titled a Barbarian. Barbarians can do just about everything except for cast spells. And when it comes to fighting and stealing and like that out in the wilderness, I don't know of a better character class. So that's what this is about, barbarians. This character class is kind of sort of a catch-all survivalist, fighter, ranger, thief, and pretty much overall badass. The character class was based on the character Conan from the popular comic books and graphic novels, and the class is appropriately named. It is a barbarian. It's one of the more useful classes in wilderness settings. Barbarians are on page 18 of the Unearthed Arcana. Unearthed Arcana is a companion book to the player's handbook. If you don't have that, you do need it. A lot of good stuff in there. Barbarians are tough, hardy fighters. They can hit creatures naturally, which are normally only hit by magical weapons. They use a D12 for hit points, and they double the normal hit point adjustment for a high constitution, and they double the armor class adjustment for dexterity. So, as long as they're wearing light or moderate armor. I think it's anything less than leather, studded leather, if I'm not mistaken. But they have a really good armor class. Barbarians have huge bonuses for their savings throws as well. Almost equivalent to dwarves, if I'm not mistaken. At least pretty similar. Barbarians have tons of abilities when they're outdoors, including climbing cliffs and trees, hiding in natural surroundings, surprise, leaping and springing. They also have back protection. They can detect illusion and detect magic. They also have substantial leadership abilities when dealing with other barbarians. See, if you have the Unearthed Arcana, be sure and read up on the Barbarian Horde. That's an important part of this class. They can summon an army. It's crazy. They have survival, first aid, and outdoor craft abilities, as well as being able to track outdoors like a ranger. They're literally a catch-all. Plus, barbarians get a variable number of other abilities depending on where they're from and the culture they come from. Literally every barbarian can be different. It's crazy. But they do have some downsides. Every character class has some downsides. So we're going to discuss the downsides now. First, they have such a broad range of abilities that it takes a lot of experience to level up. Barbarians tend to lag behind other party members as the group rises in level. Second, barbarians detest magic and those who use it. Many dungeon masters equate this to outright hatred. Barbarians have been known to kill magic users and illusionists on sight. I rather think of this as an irrational fear, something like the witch hunter mania from Salem, that sort of thing. Oh, it's evil, it's magic. Those evil witches or whatever. I give players a wide leeway in this area. I don't penalize them too much as it pertains to spellcasters. I think of them as basically primitive tribesmen. If they see something they don't understand, it's magic, Barbarians cannot even use magic potions until 3rd level, or magic weapons until 4th. Take note of the chart on page 20 of the Unearthed Arcana. Barbarians do gain experience for destroying magic items. I did a video called Barbarian B&E, Breaking and Entering. Go check that out. It's kind of funny. Kudos to my friend Bobby. Third, barbarians must be human according to the book. I allow barbarians to be half-orcs as well, because it just fits so well. Most half-orcs that are raised with humans would probably be raised in a barbarian tribe anyway. So, to me, it makes sense. At least they wouldn't be raised in big cities, that's for sure. Anyway, barbarians must also be of non-lawful alignment. They are also restricted in their initial language choices, And fourth, they do not get weapon specialization like other fighter types. They don't really need it, but, they don't get it, so. Barbarians in general have huge upsides and downsides, but all in all, a group with a barbarian in it is far more capable of surviving most situations than groups without one. For those of you who enjoy solo adventures, consider running a barbarian. Their wide array of outdoor abilities make them ideal as adventurers, while their hardy nature and fighting capabilities allow them to defeat most opponents. They also make pretty good thieves, or at least thugs, My son was running a game a while back. My wife and I were playing. The situation was that a duke had sent an exploration force into some unknown lands beyond the mountains. Excuse me, can't read my own writing. And they never returned. So the Duke organized a second group, both to explore the area and find and rescue the first group. I was running a barbarian. As I recall, my wife was running a cleric. At any rate, once beyond the mountains, we found the ruins of an old fortress. Most of the walls had been destroyed, but the main building and one tower still stood. The tower overlooked a cliff down to the sea, and we'd found remnants of the first group's equipment that they had camped. They'd camped there for some time. So the group we were with camped at the ruins, and the plan was to send out details to map the surrounding territory. One of these details did not return. We were trying to decide what to do at that point when hordes of tribesmen poured out of the trees. The initial attack obliterated the guards and breached our perimeter. Our two characters retreated into the tower to try and hide, but we were seen. We fought a retreat up the tower to the top, leaving a trail of dead up the stairs. I knew we were done for if we stayed there, and there was no way that we were going to fight our way down those stairs. My barbarian grabbed the cleric and leaped to the sea below. I made sure to land under the cleric. I had the hit points to take the fall, and the cleric kind of used me for cushion. I was hurt bad, but survived, and the cleric was able to heal me up, and we swam to shore. It took us a month, but we made it back through the mountains and to safety. Barbarians are great survivalists. They're just awesome. They have the hit points to take pretty much whatever's dished out, and they can deal the damage to be able to handle whatever comes along. They pair good with clerics. Fighter alternatives. Now, there are times when players are creating characters for the player-character group, and the fighters that they create are, shall we say, less than heroic. Maybe they lack high strength or high constitution. Maybe they are, shall we say, wimpy. Maybe they suck. Maybe the barbarian isn't Conan or the ranger isn't Strider. Who knows? In some of these cases, even weapon double specialization or the best armor simply doesn't help. It's not the player's fault. Such things happen from time to time. It can happen to anybody. It's happened to me. One of the most successful fighter characters that I ever ran had a strength of 13. He wasn't Conan. Let's just put it that way. But I had a lot of fun playing him. I've always said that a character with no flaws has no character. I've always said that, and it is absolutely true. If your character's perfect in every way, it's a lot less fun to play. That's all I'm saying. For situations where your fighters aren't exactly fightery, badass, for example. For situations like that, sometimes other party members have to step up and fill the void left by the fighter types that are stymied by bad die rolls and pitiful circumstances. You never know. And again, none of this is the player's fault. Everybody has bad die rolls. Everybody. Especially me with a 1 on my savings throw the other day. Yeah. Total party kill. Clerics can wear armor and use heavy weapons. Their to hit charts are the second best to fighters. Many of their spells are good to use before, during, and after combat. Remember, clerics are the healers. Druids can wear non-metal armor and can use a variety of different weapons. Given time to prepare before combat, they can be a real asset during combat. I don't. A lot of the druid spells, you don't want to try to cast them during combat because they take forever. That's all I'm saying. But if they have time to prepare beforehand, druids can be badass. After combat, druids' healing spells can really make a significant contribution. So, you know, clerics aren't just healers. Druids aren't just healers. There was a guy who told me years ago that the reason magic users can't wear armor is because the metal interferes with their spells. And that is not true. Because if that was the case, they could wear leather. But that's not the case. Magic users and illusionists can't wear armor at all. It's the druids who can't wear metal armor. They can wear other kinds of armor, but not metal armor. That's as per the book, by the way. Magic users, while lacking in armor and heavy weapons, wizards casting from the back row can do some significant damage. Check out my videos on precast spells and spell choices. Plus, darts from a distance do not suck. You can use 3 of them around, and who says they don't have to be dipped in something? I'm just saying. Illusionists, while lacking in armor and heavy weapons, they have many spells which can be very useful in combat. Note how many of their spells have no savings throw. That, in and of itself, makes them extremely dangerous. And anyone who discounts phantasmal force spells in combat is a complete moron. Plus, illusionists have darts. So, I'm a big fan of darts. Getting back to the phantasmal force spells, here's the thing about it. For those of you who aren't familiar, phantasmal force is where they cast illusions. If an opponent doesn't disbelieve the illusion, that illusion can kill them. So as long as the illusion is relatively believable, it's possible that they can cast spells that can go and kill people. It's crazy. People discount illusionists because their spells don't seem extremely effective until you take into account phantasmal force. And improved phantasmal force is even better. I'm just saying. If they believe the illusion can kill them. That's just the way that is. Plus, darts. Anyway, thieves. Their backstab ability is simply devastating. Anytime they can hit and run only to return from the shadows to backstab again is pure symphony. It is absolutely wonderful. Barring that, their high dexterity makes them excellent with missile weapons. So your thief in the group can jump out of the shadows, backstab, do a good damage, and then retreat into the shadows and disappear. Then he can start using his bow from the shadows. If he doesn't get another backstab opportunity, for example, if the battle moves away and he doesn't want to leave the shadows, the safety of the shadows, because if they can't see him, they can't hit him. They won't attack him if they can't see him. You see what I'm saying? If they know he's there, they can, use a fireball or, something, throw fire in there to force him out. But my point is, if they don't know where he is in the shadows, they can't really go and attack him. So for a thief, the darkness is his invisibility, or at least it's a good form of it. Very akin to it. And he, because he's using a bow from the darkness doesn't dispel like an invisibility spell will. With invisibility, if you're invisible and you shoot a bow at somebody, if you try to attack somebody, you become visible. Well, in this, if he's hiding in the shadows, arrows coming out of the shadows they're just arrows coming out of the shadows. You can do that all day long. And the darkness doesn't go away. You see what I'm saying? And having a high dexterity, which thieves generally do, then makes them pretty good with missile weapons. That's all I'm saying. Assassins are very, very similar. Everything that makes thieves good fighters applies to assassins. However, assassins also have the assassination tables, which gives them roughly a 50-50 chance to kill their victims outright, regardless of how many hit points they have. Assassins can be, oh my god, devastating from surprise. No matter what character class I am running, I always try to make a character that can take or avoid and deal lots of damage. In one game, our fighters and clerics were arguing over which tactic to use, so my wizard charged down and started smacking bad guys with precasts, magic missiles, and shocking grasps. When the group finally spurred into action, I backed off and started using fireballs and lightning bolts. The more heavier spells from a distance. In another game, our paladin our paladin convinced others not to attack the kindly old wizard. My chaotic good cleric charged in and bashed his skull in for the greater good. Now, I'm not saying that defying the paladin in the group is not generally a good idea. You have to have good reason for it. And my character in that game, I'm not going to get into the specifics because it would take forever. But my character knew this kindly old wizard wasn't a kindly old wizard. He was one of the big bad guys. There was a group of them, and he was one of them. This guy needed to die because he was doing a lot of bad things. He was allowing bad things to happen. He was causing bad things to happen. The paladin thought at the time that he was just a kindly old wizard. So I had the proof, but this guy was getting ready to kill people, so I had to stop him. Okay? My cleric rushed in and bashed his skull in. Sometimes you have to. No matter what character you have, you need to be ready to jump into the mud and blood and hack and slash and bash and skewer like the most blood-soaked, murdering, cutthroat barbarian. Remember, stereotypes will get you killed. It's survival that counts. And if you don't have a Conan, you better damn well come up with a John Wick or two. That's all I'm saying. And sometimes with John Wick, John Wick is an assassin. He's not a fighter. He fights well, but he's not a fighter. He is an assassin. Just saying.
Mr. Ranger. That's my best boo-boo impersonation. I'm sorry. But we've been calling Rangers that for years, and somebody will show up. I'm running a Ranger. Oh, look, it's Mr. Ranger. Yogi and Boo Boo. Okay. I used to hang out with this guy named Boo Boo, and he had a friend named Yogi, so, yeah. Anyway, his nickname. Anyway. Alright, so in Dungeons and Dragons, there is a subclass of fighter called a Ranger. And many people discount them as basically wimpy fighters, because they only have a D8 for hit points instead of a D10, and blah, 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 blah. And that is completely false. That's nothing of the sort. They do have a D8 for hit points, but instead of having a D8 at the beginning, normal fighters start out with a D10 for hit points. Many dungeon masters allow you to start out at maximum hit points. So, a D10 would be you start out with 10 plus whatever constitution adjustments you have for hit points. Hit points are life points. When you hit 0, you're unconscious. In the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, the Rangers start out with 2 8-sided dice. So, if you start out at maximum, Rangers start out with 16 hit points. That doesn't sound too bad, does it? There's a lot of other perks that go along with being a Ranger as well. They're limited on what kind of armor they wear and what kind of weapons they're allowed to use and what they're allowed to have as far as treasure and holdings and wealth and things like that. However, they have a lot of other nice bonuses that go along with it. Like I said, they have 2 hit dice at first level as opposed to 1. And Rangers have tracking abilities, which are very useful in a wilderness setting. If you're chasing somebody, if somebody steals something and they're trying to get away and you're trying to chase them down, if you're going through the wilderness and you see a bunch of tracks on the ground, the ranger can tell you what went through there, how long ago, how many there were, blah, 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 blah. They're really good at tracking. At 8th level, Rangers get druidic spells. So they can, I did a video called Ultimate Survivors about druids, and because they can survive well in the outdoors because nature works with them instead of against them. Rangers are very, very similar. They're kind of like the mountain men. They're not as good as druids in that respect, but they're pretty good. They're no slouches. Also, at 9th level, Rangers get to use magic user spells. They're a very limited spell casting capability, but it's there, and they can be very powerful. They also gain combat bonuses versus giant class creatures. And not all creatures have to be giants in order to fit into this class, because they've got a list. And guess what falls in that list? Ogres, orcs, trolls, giants, bugbears, ettins. I mean, it's a big list, and they get combat bonuses versus these. So, Rangers are the preeminent hunters in the game. In a wilderness setting, Rangers can provide food when the rations run low. I've mentioned this in a number of other videos. In wilderness settings, people forget to buy food, or they don't buy enough, or they get stuck out in the middle of nowhere and don't realize that they don't have the food that they need. Well, you got a ranger with a bow, you're going to eat, because he can find something to eat, unless it's something something very specific, like when the druid. Go watch my video, the Mr. Ed video. You'll find it. That one was hilarious. Ranger just couldn't find anything to hunt. It was ridiculous. Normal situation, Rangers are really good at hunting. That was a very abnormal situation. And Rangers, again, do have some limitations regarding possessions, and they have also alignment restrictions. They're only allowed to be certain alignments. But it's nothing you can't get past. On Wilderness Adventures, Rangers are indispensable. They are really, really great. They're good in fighting situations as well, because they have good hit points. They fight like fighters. A lot of people overlook or discount Rangers as being Ranger, give me a fighter, a barbarian. Blah, blah. Rangers have some nice abilities. And
the other Magic users. I've been playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons since the 70s, and I've been running it since 1979. In all that time, I've rarely seen anyone try to run an illusionist. It happens from time to time, but it's certainly very, very rare. My friend Randy runs the best illusionist I've ever seen. But other than him, I can count the number of times players have run illusionists on my 10 fingers. People just for whatever reason just don't like them. And I don't get that. Illusionists have a reputation as really weak spellcasters, but whoever says that has not perused the illusionist spell lists. I just got a few of them here. Let's look at what they get. First level illusionists get Change Self. They get Dancing Lights, just like a regular magic user. They get Phantasmal Force. As I understand it, that's a third level magic user spell, but they get it at first level. Phantasmal Force allows you to cast illusions. They get Wall of Fog. They get Gaze Reflection. I mean, it's crazy. And keep in mind, I know a lot of these spells aren't as notorious or as well explored as others, but read up on them. Some of them are quite nice. At second level, which means I believe they get them at third level. They get Improved Phantasmal Force, which is really good illusions, and they get it at second level. They get Invisibility like a normal wizard. They get Misdirection. That has so many uses. Alter Self. Fascinate. All of this at second level. And I'm just going through a few here. They get others as well. At a fifth level illusionist gets third level spells. Check out these third level spells for an illusionist. Continual Darkness. That's like the reverse of Continual Light. It's crazy. Fear. Invisibility 10-foot radius. Non-detection. Spectral Force. For fourth level spells, they get Emotion, Improved Invisibility, Mass Morph, Minor Creation, Phantasmal Killer. That one is just nasty. If you don't know what that is, you need to find a book and read up on it. Fifth level spells. Dim-Eye Shadow Monsters, Dream, Magic Mirror, that's a scrying device, Maze, Tempest Fugit, Shadow Magic. I mean, I don't understand how illusionists have gotten a rap for being weak. I really don't. Their 6th level spell list includes Death Fog, Mass Suggestion, Mirage Arcane, Permanent Illusion, Phantasmagoria, programmed illusion. You got to read up on these. Again, if you think illusionists are weak, read up on their spells, and then see if you still have that opinion. They only have 7th level spells, okay? And they get them at, I want to say 13th level. For their 7th level spell, Alter Reality, which is something like a wish spell. Prismatic Spray, Prismatic Wall. Those are nasty. Shadow Walk. Weird. Vision. I mean, when it comes to illusionists, when you get right down to the nuts and bolts, one failed saving throw can be an opponent's end really quick. All they have to do is fail a save and they can die so quickly. And there are many other spells that I didn't mention. And keep in mind, these are just the ones that I like. Excuse me, the ones that I like off the top of my head. And the illusionist cantrips are nothing to laugh at either. If you read the illusionist spells very thoroughly, immediately tons of loopholes and unorthodox uses for them become apparent. The fact that they can change self and make illusions at first level is impressive, to say the least. Phantasmal Force is nothing to laugh at. It's literally an anything spell. All they have to do is, all they have to do is not disbelieve illusion, and they believe it. How crazy is that? That's a Phantasmal Force. The next time you are asked to run a magic user in a game, consider running an illusionist. You might be surprised at how fun they are to run. I've run several in my years of playing, and like I said, Randy runs the best illusionist that I've ever seen, but hell, I take lessons from Randy. My contention here is, if you get the chance to run a magic user, don't discount the illusionist. That's all I'm saying. In Dungeons & Dragons, they have what are called classes. And classes are essentially your character's profession. You could be a fighter, you could be a thief, you could be a ranger, you could be a cleric, druid. I've talked about some in some other videos. This particular one is about a class called the Paladin. It started out as a subclass of the fighter, and then when the Unearthed Arcana came out, it became a subclass of the Cavalier. This is called a Paladin. Paladin is essentially a warrior or a fighter that is in the service of a deity. They're dedicated to serve a specific god in the books. Paladins are great warriors, and they make excellent leaders. They have awesome extra abilities and powers, and I wrote some of them down here. They detect evil. they have savings throw bonuses. They're immune to disease. They have this healing thing where they can lay on hands, and it gives them they can heal 2 points of damage per level. So a 5th level paladin can heal 10 points, just by laying on hands. It's pretty cool. They can cure disease. They have protection from evil. Starting at level 3, they can turn undead like a cleric, because clerics turn undead. Begone foul creatures to the netherworld, present the holy symbol, and do that. Well, paladins get to do that too, starting at 3rd level. They can call a warhorse at 4th level, and the warhorse is a really nice mount for this paladin. It gets a lot of neat abilities and stuff. Starting at 9th level, they can cast clerical spells, just like a cleric. So they can do extra healing and all kinds of different things. And, the paladin, as written, is a good class. The problem is that in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, as it's written, it doesn't make any sense. Let me explain. People go, well, paladins they're the goody two shoes. Yeah, they are. That's the problem. They're mandated to be lawful good. In Dungeons and Dragons, they have alignment, and alignment is like the moral outlook of your character between law and morals, and it's lawful good. You have to obey all the laws and be a good guy. Lawful evil, for example, you obey all the laws, but you can be a selfish bastard. Neutral is just neutral towards everybody. And then they have lawful evil, which means, or lawful, chaotic good, which means you want to do good and you don't give a crap about the law. Okay, it's just do good. Then there's chaotic evil, which is you don't give a shit about the law and you're out for yourself and it's just random acts of evil. Or chaotic neutral I find difficult to run because it's all chaotic. You don't care about the law, you don't care about law and order, but you don't care if it's law good or evil either. To me, that strikes me as insane. But hey, it's there. Anyway, what I'm talking about here is the paladin's necessity to be lawful good. And there's a quote, according to the player's handbook, law and good deeds are the meat and drink of paladins. That's a quote from the player's handbook. The problem is that most deities in the game are not lawful good. There's a lot of them that are, but most of them aren't. And if you're a paladin in service of a deity, you kind of want to be the same alignment as your deity. Otherwise, you might find your god somewhat wanting. And if the person you're serving is wanting, that raises doubt. Doubt is something that a paladin simply can't have, you know. Let me give you an example. Let's take Thor. Thor is a great god. Everybody knows who he is from from Marvel Universe and everything. He was in mythology long before that. Thor is a good god and a wonderful being, but he is not lawful good. He is chaotic good. That means he will toss the entire legal code in the trash if it would help him to do a good deed, to save someone's life or whatever. In fact, Thor actually dislikes laws, as he sees them to be a detriment to his overall moral outlook of good. He's mythologically, classically, has a very bad temper, and he's just, smite those evildoers. We're gonna go get them. We're gonna fight him in court. Screw that. Let's get him. Kind of thing. If a lawful good paladin dedicates himself to the service of Thor, he is going to become disillusioned with this deity, pretty quickly. How dare that self-righteous braggart ignore the laws? The ends cannot justify the means, that kind of thing. So, players have brought that to my attention for decades, and I can't argue with them. And I'm not the only dungeon master who has had these issues with my players. Early on, in the players of the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, they noticed all this discrepancy. And it became a running debate in the gaming world. To address this, Dragon Magazine published an article called A Plethora of Paladins, and they outlined paladins of every alignment, including two different neutral paladins. A Paramander and a Paramandir, I think they're called. The research that they did was extremely impressive, and the classes they came up with were awesome. The problem with these classes was that they were extremely overpowered. Normal paladins, lawful good paladins, were kind of left in the dust. I rolled stats. People brought this to my attention, so I did an experiment. I rolled exactly the same stats for a bunch of different characters, one for each different class in a plethora of paladins. Excuse me. Sorry about that. Doggy emergency. So what I did is I made one of each of the classes. And exactly the same stats, exactly the same level, the whole 9 yards. Everything was the same for each one. And I did the bare minimum of stats for each requirement, because every stat, like strength, intelligence, and charisma and all that, every class has to have has minimums, right? So I made sure each of these stats qualified for every one. So all the stats were the same. All right, and I found out one thing. The lawful good paladin didn't stand a chance. Oh my god, it was overpowered. The rest of them were overpowered. This guy literally was so underpowered it was pathetic. There's another game that I talk about called Starfleet Battles, and they had basically the same concept with the heavy cruisers. They started out with the base model of the Federation heavy cruiser, like you see on the old Star Trek, the original series, Kirk and Spock in them, and they created heavy cruisers for all the other races. Well, the problem was they had no data on a lot of these others that they were creating. So these other cruisers tended to be more powerful than the Federation heavy cruiser. You see what I'm saying? You want to tweak it here, tweak it there a little bit. Next thing you know, you're overpowered. So that's basically what happened with this. Dragon Magazine paladins are fun, but they're not really balanced for gameplay, in my opinion. So here's what I do. This is the way I allow paladins to run in my game. Paladins, upon creation, choose the deity they wish to serve and must take the same alignment. Paladins must be proficient in the weapon that their deity prefers. And I do this with clerics as well. For example, in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, clerics are supposed to use blunt weapons only. Well, what if you're a god of war that uses, you're worshiping a god of war that uses a sword? You see what I'm saying? If your cleric is dedicated to that, why would you be stuck with a mace? Or, whatever other weapon. You should use the weapon of your deity, and that's what I did with paladins. That would be their preference. And as an example there, if your paladin is serving Thor, why wouldn't you use a hammer? That would be the ultimate, not being able to use a hammer to me, would be kind of an insult, So anyway, they have to have the same weapon that their deity prefers. Now, paladins, they have a special weapon in the Dungeon Master's Guide that they can achieve through gameplay. And it's called a Holy Avenger. It's a really nice sword. Allows them to do all kinds of neat stuff. The sword is good in anybody's hand, but in a paladin, oh my god, it shines. It's just awesome. Okay, it's called a Holy Avenger. They have this sword, and they get special powers when they own one. So not only is it more powerful, but it bolsters their powers. Now, to reflect these other paladin types, their holy weapon or holy, or in this case, unholy weapon, because you can have an evil paladin, would be of whatever weapon that their deity prefers. It doesn't have to be a sword, for example. Why would a paladin of Thor not use a hammer? See, so his holy weapon would be a hammer. And again, you have to read the deity in the book and find out what weapon they prefer, because that's how that works. A paladin of Grumsh, for example, would use a spear. You see what I'm saying? And you can tweak the abilities of the paladin and their special weapon according to their alignment and their deity. A paladin of Grumsh, the evil Orcan deity, would use a spear, and instead of curing disease, he would probably cause disease. That sort of thing. You can tweak it a little bit here and there. And that's up to you how you want to run your game. That's the beauty of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. The rules allow you to tweak it how you want it. You're not ruled and regulated to death, like some of the later ones. And again, it's called a Holy Avenger, but that doesn't really fit a weapon of an evil paladin. So you can name it whatever you want. I've used Unholy Reaver, Unholy Basher, whatever you want to use. It's up to you. I've heard a lot of different things. Anyway, and this keeps all the different paladins relatively equal in power level. You do not have to run paladins in your game this way, but I have found that it works well. And it is pretty balanced, and it answers the questions that paladins of other alignments. And I hope this video helps some of the newer dungeon masters. And remember, the above and beyond all else, when you're running a game, no matter what rule you make or choose to use in your game, the only thing you have to remember is to use the same rule consistently. Consistency. That's the main thing. And use the rules fairly. Don't bash people with the rules, as it were. The goal is to have fun. Your players need to be having fun. And that's the whole point. That's your job. If your players aren't having fun, you failed. That's the only way to fail as a dungeon master, is if your players are not having fun. And that is the measure of your success. So, I do a lot of discussions of the different classes and rules I ignore, rules I use, that kind of thing. I want to discuss Dungeons and Dragons on my channel because I feel it's important for families to be able to spend time together, especially in these lockdowns and with the pandemic and all that. Families have to be able to converse, and what better way than over tabletop role-playing? You talk about the day, you consume munchies, and you have a good time. Nobody's on their phones, nobody's playing a video game, none of that crap. Okay? I have discussed stories and rules hacks and things like that. The various classes that I enjoy running. The one class that I have never felt comfortable running is the Bard. First edition Bards were not, in my opinion, not good. They weren't well designed. I've never run a game where a player has worked up a Bard through the through the course of the game. I played in a game a couple of times where several different games where players had run bards, but they had run them prior so that they were actually bards, and I'll get to the reasoning for that. But I've never felt comfortable playing with them, playing them, or having them in my game, and there's a reason for that. It's hard to quantify them to make them equal to the players in the game. Let me explain. In first edition D&D, AD&D, the Bard was a very odd class. It wasn't listed in the same place as the other character classes. Instead, it was back in Appendix 2 on page 117, sort of in the back of the book there. And the reason for this was that the Bard was not a normal class. To qualify for a Bard, a character had to start out as a fighter and be nothing else, just a fighter, until at least 5th level. Anytime after that, but before 8th level, so up to 7th level, the character then had to switch over and be a thief. Again, sometime between 5th and 9th level, the character had to then switch over and be a druid. And honestly, after you get all that, once they start studying druidic, spells and things like that, at that point they're bards. But they must fulfill all of the requirements in all of the other classes prior to progressing to the Bard's table, table 1 on page 117. I suggest you read through the entire section to really understand it. There in the Player's Handbook, before you run one, before you attempt to run one allow one to be run in your game, or before you let anybody else run one in the area with you. If somebody wants to run a Bard, there's not much you can do about it. But if you're the dungeon master, you can say, I'm sorry, the Bard's not, it's only non-player characters. You can do that. And I suggest you do that. However, I never liked first edition Bards because, now, second edition Bards were much better because you started out as a first level Bard. In first edition D&D, Bards, by the time they actually become Bards, they don't really need to be because you're a 5th level fighter and at least a 5th level thief. You see what I'm saying? By the time you switch over and actually be a Bard, you don't really need to be one. Anything that you can't outwit, you can outfight by then. First edition Bards are difficult to incorporate into an existing campaign because a first level Bard is essentially already a 5th level fighter and at least a 5th level fighter and at least a 5th level thief. So, and at that point they're progressing as a druid. They're way overpowered. You cannot start a first level campaign with Bards because they're way overpowered unless everybody has those abilities prior to that. If a player really wants to have a Bard in your game, I suggest you have them build one in your game. If you're going to allow it, make them build the character from scratch. Level 1, first level fighter, go up to 5th level at least, and then go be a thief at least until 5th level, because that way he progresses at the same time as your other players. Otherwise, if you start him out as a first level Bard, he's going to be so overpowered, your other players are going to feel underwhelmed. You see what I'm saying? They're not going to be near what in order to put a challenge towards the Bard, the other players are going to get the snot kicked out of them. If you gear the campaign for these guys, the Bard is going to be bored. The guy playing the Bard is going to be bored. So yeah, you gotta weigh that. Once second edition came out, the first level Bards started out at first level, and they were good. They were cool. It was okay. That was one advantage that second edition had over AD&D, was that they fixed that. So, at any rate, so just word of the wise: if you're going to allow somebody to run Bards, make sure you start them at first level and make them build that Bard up, because otherwise, it just doesn't work well. It just doesn't.